I'm sorry that I cannot be physically with you in Athens, but I'm happy to deliver this intervention as a video recording. As we all know, climate change is already very visible. Practically the whole world has been facing increase of heat waves. About half of the world has seen an increase of flooding events, and about 1/3 of the world has seen an increase of drought events. And in Mediterranean region where you are now, you have seen increase of all of those heat waves, flooding events, and drought. And for example, this year what has been happening in Greece, there were first heat wave with drought and forest fires, and more recently also very severe flooding event. And if you look at the future of the Mediterranean region, it's going to be hotter and drier. And globally we have seen and will see the biggest change in the Arctic, but the second biggest change is going to take place in the Mediterranean region, which means complications for agriculture and maybe also complication for the tourism, because the tourist doesn't like very high temperatures and dry environment. Globally, we have broken many records in climate change. Year by year, we have seen an increase of carbon dioxide concentration, methane concentration, and nitrous oxide concentration. In temperatures, we have seen a steady increase, but we have seen also this year-to-year variability, which is very much related to the ocean temperature in the Pacific. Yes, there's also flooding areas, but now we have gone to El Niño phase, and it's very likely that this year or next year will be the warmest year on record. We have stored lots of heat to the ocean, and the seawater mass has been warming a lot, and actually we have stored more than 90% of the excess heat to seawater. Glaciers are melting, and it has been speeding up, which means that in the long run we will get less water in rivers which have their origins from glaciers here in Europe, in Asia, in Latin America, and also North America. Sea level rise has doubled during the past 20 years, and we have started seeing growing amount of weather extremes as has been the case in Europe. And in Europe, unfortunately, these heat waves and drought that we have seen during the past 2 years, they will become more and more frequent, and they will have big impacts on human health and also agricultural conditions. This negative trend in weather patterns will continue anyhow until 2060s, meaning more often heat waves, flooding events, drought, and in tropical areas also more tropical storms. But in the 2060s we could phase out this trend if we are successful with climate mitigation, hopefully to the Paris limits 1.5 to 2 degrees targets. At the moment we are heading towards 2.8 degrees warming. And this sea level rise and glacier game we have already lost. We know that 3 million years ago we had similar carbon dioxide concentration, which was more than 400 ppm, and the sea level was 10 to 20 meters higher than today, which means that Greenland and Antarctic glaciers had contributed to sea level rise, and the temperatures were about 2 to 4 degrees warmer than today. And it's clear that we have to also pay attention to climate adaptation, how to minimize the damages to various sectors, including agriculture and forestry. But once we talk about climate mitigation, we have to also look at the numbers. And 2/3 of this problem that we are having in hand is caused by our consumption of fossil fuels, coal, oil, and natural gas. And we cannot solve this problem without touching that biggest contributor to the problem. A little bit less than 20% is caused by methane, which is very much coming from tropical wetlands, from rice paddies, and also from cattle, especially cows. And about 10% is coming from land use, and there the biggest problem is related to the deforestation of tropical rainforests in Amazonian region, Central Africa and some parts of Southern Asia. And of course in Europe we can also contribute land use, but that's not the biggest challenge that we are having. Europe as a continent is responsible for 8% of the global emissions today, and here again the biggest issues are related to consumption of coal, oil and natural gas, where the emissions are coming from energy production, from industry and transport. Those are the three biggest components. Land use is a component, but it's much smaller than those three big components. In Europe, we have this Green Deal, which is very ambitious and that is supposed to lead us to 1.5 degrees target. And of course, it's important that the whole world would follow the same path. So far, the big Asian economies like China and India haven't been able to make similar commitments, and that's of course a global challenge. And we know that Eastern Asia is responsible for almost 1/3 of the global emissions. Besides climate mitigation, we have to also keep in mind food security, employment and property values, and it's also important that we have a balanced approach once we talk about European climate policies, where we take into account climate issues, biodiversity, but not only them, also food security, employment and property values should be taken into account to find a balanced view and to motivate all of the players in the countries to be on board. And it's also important to keep this European perspective in mind and think of the global perspective. So Europe as a continent alone cannot solve this problem. But in the best case, this transition to climate-friendly technologies and to take the biodiversity into account is a business opportunity, because the world is gradually moving to a new direction, and the first comers may be the winners. Finally, I would like to say that in the media there are also lots of horror stories on climate change, and the reality is not as bad as sometimes you may get the feeling while following the media. We were facing similar things in the 1980s when we were afraid of a nuclear war, and luckily those were not realistic. And in case of climate change, we are talking about various scales of grey, and the future may be even light grey if we are able to reach the Paris limits, and it may be darker grey if we fail with climate mitigation. But the end of the world is not coming because of climate change. But it's really rational to limit this warming to the Paris limits, which will be best for the welfare of mankind, biosphere, and also agriculture and forestry. With these words, thanks for the opportunity to address you, and I would like to wish you very successful conference in Athens. Thank you.